Hey, it's Danny from ProjectManaverse.com, and in this video I'm going to share with you 7 pro tips when it comes to writing and also using your project plan on a page. So let's get started. First of all, what is a plan on a page? Put simply, it's a summarized version of your detailed project plan, and it should contain all that key activity that needs to happen in order to deliver your project on the whole. And not only the activity, but also when it starts, when it finishes, when it's taking place. And a plan on a page is usually broken down on the horizontal in swim lanes, so maybe about 5 or 6 swim lanes, and you break it down into project scope areas, or if you want to, you could do it by project phase, so your design, your build, your test, your deployment, benefits, etc. So that's what your plan on a page is. I always say this, but if you could only have one tool as a project manager, it should be the plan on a page. They are so valuable. They're so valuable for your team as well. And they really do increase the chances of a successful delivery. So you really should get on board and start using one of these. So let me now go through the 7 pro tips when it comes to creating and using your project plan. Tip number 1 is make sure you are ragging all your milestones when you create this plan. So every chevron, every activity on your plan, you should have a little milestone at the end of it, and you should be ragging that milestone either red, amber or green. And if you don't know what that means, it's essentially describing the health of that activity and how likely it is to complete on time. So if that milestone is red, you're going to miss it, or it's already been missed. If it's green, it's fine, it's on track, you're due to complete it when you said you would complete it. And if it's amber, it's somewhere in between there. So it really helps if you've got a plan on a page with all those milestones on there to rag each one, so anyone can have a look and just see where that plan is at risk and where it's going to slip, and you can start thinking about how to get that plan back on track. So that's tip number 1, make sure you rag your milestones. Tip number 2 is use a key on the plan on a page. So for every symbol you have on your plan on a page, make sure you've got what that symbol means in the key at the top of the page. And also make sure you stipulate what the color coding is when you're ragging your milestones. So I've just gone through what red, amber, green means in terms of your milestones, but sometimes different project managers can rag them differently. For example, how I tend to do it, if I have a red milestone, that means that milestone is not going to be met, or it has already slipped. That's what I classify as red. But sometimes project managers will rag a milestone, let me take a step back. Sometimes project managers will miss a milestone, that's what I'm trying to say. They'll miss a milestone, but they won't actually rag it red. They'll just rag it amber because they don't think missing that milestone is much of a big deal, so they won't put it as red. So just make sure you're articulating your rag criteria in the key, so when your senior stakeholders look at that, they see a red milestone, they know what that means. Is it really that there's a big problem, or does it just mean you've missed it? So it's just kind of clear on what that all means. So make sure you do that. So that's number 2. Number 3 is show your critical path on your project plan. And the critical path is essentially the key sequence of activities that need to happen in order to hit your ultimate go live date. So if your final milestone, your final big milestone anyway, is your project go live, where you put your code into production and you released your software to the world, all the key activities or key milestones that lead up or wrap up into that final milestone must be part of that critical plan. So essentially, if you were to be late on any of those key critical path milestones, it would shift out all the subsequent critical milestones to the right by the same amount of time. So for example, let's say you're due to finish testing at the end of January, and once you fit, and you can't go live until you have finished testing, right? So if you're going to push out your testing by 2 weeks, that means your go live milestone is also going to be pushed out by 2 weeks, and it works all the way back. So it causes this big cascade and chain reaction of kind of like dominoes, I guess. So that's why we know that the critical path is really important, because if any milestone on your critical path is going to be delayed or is delayed, that's going to impact your go live date, and you need to think of how you're going to mitigate that to get it back on track. So it's really important you do that. It's not quite an exact science, it's a bit of an art. So how I do it is I just generally highlight the chevrons in the plan that are on the critical path, do it in like bright color so it's really clear. If you look at that plan on a page, you've got a very bright critical path going through it. And again, it's hard to get it exact. Sometimes you can do certain things in parallel, but they're still kind of on the critical path. So you have to use your judgment a little bit, but make sure that's clear. And it's very useful for your stakeholders to see that on your plan. So that's number 3. Sorry, that was number 4. Number 5 is keep your plan on a page tidy, because as you go through your project, you'll keep having to change things on there. You might have to add a few things on there, and over time it can begin to get a little bit cluttered, and you don't want it to look scrappy. You want it to look nice and neat and tidy, because it is a key document that you're going to be sharing with your team and your stakeholders, and it reflects poorly on you if you bring up a project plan that's just a complete mess or it's scrappy. You want it to be always in tip-top shape. It looks great, easy to read, it's not all cluttered, it's not all squashed together in places. Just make sure you're spending some time every week to tidy it up so it always looks good. That's your tip. That's tip number 5. Sorry. Tip number 6 is this is on the planning side. When you're actually putting this plan on a page together, make assumptions if you need to. Sometimes it's hard to get a complete plan right at the start of the project because you don't know everything, and some people will say, oh, we can't plan this, we don't know this, we don't know that, sorry, and they kind of fold their arms and refuse to do a plan. Don't do that. Just if you don't know something, just make an assumption, just assume the most likely outcome, and just make sure you're creating a list of those assumptions so you can prove them later as your project evolves and as you learn more and your design evolves and all that good stuff. So make sure you can do be sure to use assumptions in your planning process, because then you can actually get an entire plan together. Otherwise you're just blocked and you can't plan things because you don't know certain facts that you need to know. Make the assumptions, put it in a one-pager on the next slide maybe, and then as you go through your projects, make sure you're proving those assumptions and proving they're actually true. Okay, the last one is, regularly review the project plan with your team. Share it with them as much as possible. I mentioned earlier that the project plan on a page is the #1 project tool for a project manager. Now, a big reason for that is because it brings clarity to your team in terms of exactly what is happening and what they need to be doing, and it also brings confidence to your team as well that your project objectives are going to be achieved because we have a concrete plan of how to get there. And as long as we follow this plan, there's no reason why we shouldn't succeed. And if you've got all your milestones ragged and you're keeping them up to date, then you can clearly see if everything is all green, we're going to get there. If you've got through a few ambers, that's not a problem. You can work together to get it back on track. But make sure you're imprinting that plan on a page in your team's minds, because that is the vision that they all need to get behind. That is your key tool that brings clarity from the nebula, as I always say, that brings order from chaos. So make sure you share it as much as possible. And if you do that, you can anticipate risk together. You can make sure that everything's lined up to hit those milestones. And it's just a brilliant tool for everyone to use and make best use of. Okay, that's the video. I'm going to wrap up there. Hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. And until tomorrow, please take care.